I'm John Batchelor. Mary Kissel, the Wall Street Journal, is here, and we're going to play on a fun new game for Republican partisans. It's called Mediscare. Mary, in the Mediscare game, you get to kick grandmothers off of a cliff and pretend you're Paul Ryan. And you can only lose if you run out of grandmothers. So right now, there's a lot of grandmothers in America we're going to kick off the cliff. I am not kidding, Mary. Have you seen the ad?
John, I'm from Florida, the home of grandmothers.
Yes. Have you seen the ad, or have you just heard of the ad that was used in the 26th New York?
I have not been able to see the ad.
It's fabulous. It's just everything you want. You think you're watching a Monty Python skit, but it's a genuine ad. And I welcome John Fund, who first alerted me to this ad on the evening of the eve of the 26th election on Tuesday the 24th. The 26th election went to the very able and very deaf Democratic candidate, Kathy Hochul, who used that ad and other direct, blunt remarks to attack Paul Ryan's Path to Prosperity budget for 2012. And Mr. Fund, in telling me about the grandmother ad, I didn't believe it. I actually checked it, and it's real. Mr. Fund, good evening to you. The grandmothers plunging won the 26th New York, a heavily Republican district, for the Democratic Party. Does that mean that all the grandmothers are going to be sacrificed for the victory in 2012 for the Democrats?
Well, about 21% of the voters in that special election on Tuesday said Medicare was the most important issue. The Democrat, Kathy Hochul, got three-quarters of them. So for those who were susceptible to Mediscare, the issue worked. Hochul had one issue. It was Republicans are trying to end Medicare and shove Granny off the cliff. I don't think they'll have as clean a shot in other elections. There'll be a special election in Nevada, for example, in the fall. And, of course, we have others in 2012. But this is not just a wake-up call. This is a wake-up siren for the Republicans that their Medicare message is incomplete, incoherent, inchoate. They have got to sharpen it. Otherwise, they are going to be the victims of Medicare demagoguery, and it wasn't as if they hadn't been warned.
And John, Mary here, did the Republicans get that message, or did you see Republican strategists coming out and kind of making other excuses for the loss?
Well, remember, in public, you don't want to show panic, and you shouldn't. So a lot of what you heard in public was, yes, this is a setback, yes, we have to recalibrate. In private, they know that they have a lot that they're going to have to retool. They're going to have to send every member of Congress through, I would call, rhetorical and intellectual boot camp so they can be able to defend the Medicare changes. Remember, in April, all but 4 House Republicans voted for it. This week, all but 5 Senate Republicans voted for it. So they've crossed the Rubicon. They have got to defend this, and frankly, it's not responsible not to address Medicare. Bill Clinton himself was at the Pete Peterson Fiscal Crisis Summit yesterday saying the message to the Democrats from New York is not don't do anything on Medicare. That would be completely irresponsible. And Clinton said, just because you have some short-term advantage here doesn't mean you don't have a responsibility to address this entitlement problem. You know, I tried to address it in the late 1990s, and of course, he didn't say this, but what Clinton proposed in the 1990s through his own commission was, frankly, very much like the premium support program that Paul Ryan has proposed. There was a lot more bipartisan agreement on Medicare 15 years ago. That's the sad part about this. The two parties have become completely polarized.
We're speaking to John Fund of the Wall Street Journal, of course, about 26 New York, but we're looking forward, not backwards. A special election does not determine 2012. Messaging does. Mary, at this point, I ask you about Florida. The crude and effective message used in 26 New York, will that play in Florida?
I think it has resonance in Florida if the Republicans, as John said, don't come back with a strong message. And that message is, if we don't reform this program, you're not going to have any benefits. And that's the simple message that they need to go back to their constituencies with.
A puzzle, John. Paul Ryan. Is he adequate to this job? Has he been abandoned by his own leadership? He didn't make a mistake. He presented that budget after working on it for years. Should we be looking to John Boehner and better leadership?
I saw Paul Ryan. He spoke right just after Bill Clinton of the Pete Peterson Forum. He's not retreating one bit. I think the Republican leadership has been a little standoffish, but they are still standing with Ryan, and I believe they've lashed themselves to the mast. They are going to be blamed for this or given credit for this regardless of what they do, so they might as well figure out a way to defend it and push it forward. I think it can be neutralized, if they know how to explain it to people, and frankly, if the stark numbers that the president's own commission, President Obama's own commission on Medicare, says the program runs out of money in less than a dozen years. You pound those numbers home, and I think that you may not convince people that they want Medicare changes, but you can perhaps blunt them and perhaps get some points for political courage.
Let's talk about the presidential candidate, especially Tim Pawlenty. Mary, Tim Pawlenty was commenting in a way that made me think, given this is a man who says everything in a, what you'd have to say, calm and measured, even dull manner.
Like a pet rock, John.
Yes,
like
if he was capable of kicking Ryan under the bus, it would be sort of with a feather. But he doesn't want anything to do with Ryan. Is that a way to interpret his remarks?
Well, his remarks today were interesting because he said if he were president and he were asked to vote on Ryan's budget, that he would. But he also said, I'm going to have my own plan and I'm going to address Social Security. So to John Fund on the line, John, is reforming Social Security a winning message to take into 2012?
I think all of the entitlements have to be addressed. Medicaid, Social Security, Medicare, food stamps, all of them. 1 out of 6 Americans are on food stamps now. So this is what's bankrupting the country. And I think if that's what Pawlenty said, that's reasonable. Presidential candidates are allowed to have their own plans. They don't have to march in lockstep with House Republicans. And I would wait to see exactly what Pawlenty's going to propose. I will give credit to him this far. At least he went to Iowa and he repeated his previous support of ethanol subsidies and said we're going to have to phase out federal subsidies to ethanol. And he said it in Iowa, which is the Rosetta Stone of ethanol subsidy.
Right. One detail here, John, and we're walking through from 26 New York, and we're looking to 2012. The party lacks a nominee, so we don't have a presidential candidate to lead the ticket. That will answer a lot of these questions, John. It's impossible to say what the party should do until they have a presidential contender. Is that correct?
Yes, and frankly, it may be to the advantage of Republicans not to have a designated nominee too early, because Barack Obama is prepared to launch any number of spitballs and mud baths at them as soon as the nominee is identified. So perhaps the current unsettled state of affairs may actually benefit them because there's no one target for Obama and the Democrats to shoot at.
Here's a puzzle for you, Mary, and then I'll ask John. The economy drives the election. That's what's important. And we're getting, I don't have to emphasize this. We have some numbers that are not vigorous consistently. Housing numbers, employment numbers. I sent a bunch of them too today. The professionals are worried. Is that going to be shoved aside because of Medicare, or was this a one-off? Are we going to be back to gasoline, jobs, and housing in a year?
No, I think gasoline, jobs, and housing will remain on people's minds because the president isn't going. It doesn't look like he's going to make any serious reforms to invigorate this economy over the next 2, 3, 4 quarters. So I think the situation that we're in today, in terms of the national economy, may be very similar to what we're facing next year.
And Mr. Fun, Medicare isolated does look like a difficult sell for the Republicans, given that they're talking about the future. Gasoline, jobs, and housing, that's an immediate sell. Does that dominate, John?
Together, those form a new misery index. High gasoline prices, low economic growth, and bad unemployment numbers. All of that added together is going to be led to a very unsettled, angry electorate if it's not improving. And remember this, no president since modern polling began in the 1930s has ever won re-election if unemployment is 7.3% or above.
John Fund of the Wall Street Journal. Mary Kissel. Thank you, Mary. Of the Wall Street Journal editorial page, I'm John Batchelor.